And ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, friends of Frisbee, here at Bob Dean's Park in beautiful, slightly less than sunny Ōtautahi, Christchurch, and those watching at home, we welcome you to the 2023 Division 1 New Zealand Mixed Ultimate Championships called Blair Munro Toku Ingoa.
Kelsey Vielik Toku Ingoa.
And what a pleasure and a privilege it is to be here for the opening match between Euphoria, hailing from Auckland, and HMC from Canterbury.
No mai haere mai koutou, welcome. I'm really excited to be here with you guys, and what a day, what conditions, what a great game to be kicking off this tournament, this 3-day tournament. Again, today's Friday, first game of the day, and we'll see how these conditions, especially the wind, impacts what's happening right now. So we see the pull coming up from the left side of the field, and that's actually an upwind pull. What a way to start. What are the conditions looking like right now, Blair? What's going on?
It's changeable to say the absolute least as HMC put a chip up the near sideline. McFarlane marked by Brennan.
Of course, we're seeing HMC in dark. They have possession right now on offense. Euphoria is in whites.
And just absolutely chaotic conditions, to say the absolute least, as we're seeing the local side from Canterbury with some great offensive pressure, pushing to the far sideline with a big long shot going up.
What a bid!
A great attempt by Anthony Haney for Euphoria, but it's not going to be enough as HMC go up one on the board.
Look at that celebration. You know, Blair, I think that's really, what a great start of the tournament. There's so much to say here. Haney with that massive bid, laying it all out. Really, great point for HMC there, but really showing them that every point's going to be contested for the rest of the game. Both teams coming out hot right off the bat. They've warmed up, and that's an example of what they're bringing to the field. Teams that really put that effort in, spend that time coming together. Beautiful handler movement leading to that long connective throw. Despite, as we were saying, the conditions, what a point to start the game, both offensively and defensively.
Not just the game, Kelsey, but also the entire tournament. These are teams who have performed incredibly well at their qualifying tournaments. They've fought for this all season. They've worked hard. You are about to see the very best in New Zealand Ultimate on display on your screens right now. Just a fantastic play.
More time.
Oh.
That's all you can give on defense, though, right? If you're
everything.
Gonna give up a point, yeah, he gave everything he had. Now, an interesting comment on HMC here. Great point to them. First one on the board. It's a bit of a different team than we've seen in the past. HMC, of the two biggest clubs in Christchurch, the younger of the two, the other being Credo. And they've picked up some older players, so it's a really interesting mix of experience that they're bringing. Players like Dave Sanders, who's got a massive legacy representing New Zealand on the world stage. I think Emma Jane Holdaway, who has the disc right now with the pull. Lots of tenured players with a lot of up-and-coming talent as well. So I think a big challenge for them, bringing that together and creating that flow, which we're seeing they're doing a good job of right now. And
a great pickup there by Gigi Forder, as we see a nice thread through to Ben Chong, but he's not going to be able to get it in hands. We're going to see possession go back the other way. The mixed Ultimate Championship, so at the moment, as a move to improve gender parity, every 2 points the gender matching majority changes. And the pendulum of Ultimate swings in both directions as Euphoria are going to get another chance.
We see Forder just mellowing the team out there, so that's two silly baubles in a row. And that's really the wind and the wet disc at play that we're seeing.
Petra Horvath, who we have seen perform incredibly well this season already, putting the gold medal on for mobility scuba at the Mixed Masters Championships. But it's Chong through to Dan Forder to put Euphoria on the board. HMC, quick offensive hold to lead off the game. Euphoria, quick to recover after small mistakes, putting one on the board of their own.
So there's that first bauble that we saw. Interesting, though, that Euphoria, while they messed up that first throw, I think that's all they really needed to dial back in, because personally, I'm a really big fan of the inside-out flick, and that's one thing that Euphoria really capitalized on here. We're seeing that inside-out forehand across the field. Same look to the same player. We'll see if they keep looking for those inside-out flicks. It's one of my favorite throws, and of course, if they keep doing that, it's up to HMC. players, we're back online. We will see you on the YouTube link. And pausing this for now.
Yep. All right, and we are back on live stream. Nothing but smooth ultimate brought to you by the crew at ULTI.TV. Once again, Bob Dean Field in Ōtautahi. It looks like that foul call is going to be contested in this match between Euphoria and HMC. Anthony Haney with a beautiful upwind hug, looking for Burris in the end zone, but that contact on the play, they weren't able to make a determination. Once again, my name is Blem and I'm joined by the inimitable, the impossible, the incredibly talented, the always welcome Kelsey Bielik.
Thank you, Blair. And that's one thing I really love to see here, that Haney's making that play and launching it again, looking for the exact same option. What separation?
Humphreys with a slide. Looks like it's going to be the one. He brings it back within one. The score, 4-3.
Looks like there was a call. It's a point. It's a point.
They're calling it a point. Bringing it back to a one-point game. Fantastic work by Humphreys. Again, it's Billy Ray Skyrus himself, the talent from Tennessee, putting that long shot up, looking for his trusted receivers. Speaking of trust, this tournament would not be possible without the NZ Community Trust, who have provided us a lot of support in bringing Ultimate to you. This would be the point at which I would hit a button and bring up a little sponsor logo. Unfortunately, you'll have to take my word for it, but we are hugely grateful to them for their support in bringing you the 2023 New Zealand Mixed Ultimate Championships Division 1. Euphoria to come out on defense. That was an upwind hold, which is amazing work by them. An opportunity now for a downwind break, and they might be able to tie the game.
So the first upwind point that we've seen Euphoria put up, and as I was saying, I was really excited to see that Haney's taking those options, that there are those deep looks coming out, especially when you have windy conditions. It's critical to still spread the field. Show the defensive players that you have a range of options, that you have throwers who can still put things up, that defense needs to respect both the deep and under space. In this situation, HMC not respecting that deep space, thinking that potentially the wind was on their side, that a deep puck wouldn't be as easy to catch, it wouldn't go quite as far, it wouldn't be executed quite as well. And Haney with that throw, Euphoria in general, trusting each other, trusting the disc, and really exciting to see them clawing back with that break.
Humphreys going to put up another pull. It's going to touchdown and roll. Great work there. Dempster to pick up and initiate.
That classic quick handler movement from HMC, which I'm such a big fan of. They're holding the disc for such a short amount of time, easily finding the next player. It makes for some really beautiful flow. What a break as well.
Sanders to Chung, pushing towards that far sideline as Haney closes the trap. It comes in nice and low.
Great catch from Chung, who scored the previous upwind point from HMC. There's a pick called on the field.
So
what's a pick, Blair?
I'm glad you asked, Kelsey. A pick, given that Ultimate is a non-contact sport, as we've seen a couple of those contacts result in fouls called, when the path of a defender trying to follow their offensive counterpart is impeded by the positioning or movement of another player, that constitutes a pick, and so players are allowed to reset to where they think they reasonably would have been had the pick not occurred.
Again, Ultimate Frisbee is a non-contact sport. It's critical to avoid contact, if at all possible. HMC clawing up the field. Again, wind is not on their side at the moment. It's their enemy, you could say. And making really use of their quick, small passes, their trust in each other, the fast movement, the nice flow, to move it slowly but surely. Not biting at those deep options or throwing up tricky throws that maybe are more difficult to execute.
And it touches down just a little too early for O'Hara to get the disc, giving possession back to Euphoria. We've got Brennan streaking deep.
I love that.
Humphreys finds Burris.
He points deep. He's looking for that deep option there.
Wanting to reset. Tried to look all the way cross field to Christine Moore. Had to look back for Anthony Haney, losing yards in the process, but it's a turnover. It's going to give possession back to HMC.
You can tell that the disc is wet there. We've seen a few of those bobbles, and of course, just trickier to hold on to a piece of plastic when it's covered in water.
So big thanks to whoever put on the weather on behalf of the council. O'Hara goes up, finds Sanders. She's not quite in. Tinas aggressive on the mark, threads one right through to Dempster for the score. It's going to be HMC 5 to Euphoria 3. A great upwind hold to answer Euphoria's previous score. Now they've got the opportunity for a downwind break.
And I think really spectating this game, watching this game from the sideline, there was such a clinical upwind points. We've seen Hawks going upwind, which is really exciting, and that was a prime example of fast, quick movement, trust in the other players. And really, HMC holding the disc for not longer than probably around 3 seconds, as they were just finding that open player and moving it where they needed to, throwing up relatively easy passes, aside from some beautiful breaks from the handlers. Relatively easy passes and not challenging themselves to take the most challenging, difficult option if they have an easy one right in front of them. Props for beautiful flow. Easy passes and just trusting each other to make a great clinical upwind point.
And the drizzle is starting to come in, so we're getting it dominantly from the right-hand side of your screen, pushing across towards the left, but it is quite changeable, and that is one of the perils of playing Ultimate in conditions like this. As the wind is not super consistent, you might put a throw up because you're feeling a slight lull in the wind, but then the wind picks up, it's going to push the disc up, it's going to bring it back down. You're going to have a little bit of more trouble hitting your receivers, especially if you're going to try and force those long options. We're going to see what HMC do on defense as Euphoria have another opportunity to work the disc upwind.
Definitely, we've seen that energy coming from Euphoria as well. In that first point from Haney, we've seen some beautiful long throws showing that they have the ability to navigate windy conditions, rainy conditions regardless. So I'm excited to see what they pull out of their pockets here on this offensive upwind point.
GG Forda with a break, trying for that upline flick again. Goes wide, finds Ben Chong.
What a knee slide with style with the catch.
He was hoping to recenter the disc, but Craddock got in the way. It's Duffy, has the disc now. Forda trying to make an aggressive cut. Swings wide, finds Dan Forda.
That's an ankle biter of a throw, but he cleans it up.
And he puts the shot up, but it turns early in the wind. It's not going to find the hands of Chandra. It's going to go back to HMC. We're going to see Aspinwall pick up and initiate that great roller pull. That's someone who knows how to throw in these conditions. So we're going to see how far he's able to push the HMC offense.
So that throw just there, a prime example of, as a Frisbee player, with the throws you can normally put up, especially during calm conditions, I think that's a great example of throwing that around, outside, and forehand. A deep look, can't reel it in. Another example there, to be honest, when in calm conditions you get quite familiar with what you have in your repertoire and what you can put up, what will be a successful pass. And then as soon as you throw in some variability, all of a sudden you put up the same thing in full confidence that it'll work, and all of a sudden it doesn't. Making the shorter passes, really the shorter passes, especially when you're throwing low to the ground where it's less windy, much higher, with a much higher chance of converting.
It was great work by Michelle Martin. Oh, a little Mac, it's going to stretch it. That's Aspinwall once again. He was looking for Martin deep. She was doing a great job stretching the defense on that previous possession. We'll see what happens again. Touches down, not going to be pulled in by Shara Hyder. We're going to see what Euphoria are able to do.
Great to see players like Hyder on the field. She's been such a stalwart of support in the community as tournament director, supporting administration within the community in the past, and now displaying her skills on the field as well. Such a dynamic player.
Aspinwall with a little bit of a collision, but Chandra's not going to make a call on that one. Tries to clog the lane there.
Quite a bit of contact on the field. It's great that the teams are seeing that as equal and not disproportionately advantageous to either team. There's a bit more contact that we're seeing on the field, and whether that's with regards to wind bubbling the disc, putting it up, or just trickier throws to catch, I hope it doesn't lead to any issues.
Martin puts one through McFarlane, marked by Chong. He puts the long shot up. It's Dan Forda, who I don't know if he needed to jump for that one, but it looked pretty good anyway.
So that's the second, down in the opposite end zone. The last turnover we saw was also an outside-in forehand. We're seeing another one here. And when you're putting the disc up high, wind just has its way with it. So we have got a contact call on the field now. Hyder is discussing.
Not a huge amount of perspective able to be offered by us here in the booth. It always comes down to the players making the calls themselves. Did not really get a great opportunity to see what that play looked like. I'll blame it on the HMC playing out of a dark uniform, just providing not enough contrast against the trees on the left-hand side of your screen for us to get a really clean play. But it looks like that foul has been accepted. So the turnover is going to stand. We're going to see HMC to pick up the disc.
They've indicated that it's a point.
Oh.
We'll see. It's an uncontested foul, as you can see. And she's pointing to where the disc should be picked up, so maybe not a point. But great communication regardless between both teams. There's a limited amount of time between that both players can use to discuss the foul and what happened. However, great to see that everyone is on the same page on the field. Both teams communicating with each other well. Again, there's been a bit of contact in this game. I think both teams, it's a display of both teams, the energy that they're bringing, and the desire to take the game away. Hyder's taking the disc out, so it's an uncontested foul, not resulting in a point. She's looking for the swing. And setting up a layout for the points. What a great point, a little ankle biter, a low throw. But in conditions like this, you know, when it's raining, when the ground is wet, it feels like such a safe place where you can throw your body on the line, throw it out on the field, and a sliding catch. Such a glorious way to score the point, putting HMC on the board with one more.
Up by 3. In the absence of confirmation, we're going to assume that we have a game to 15, which means... I'm not sure why they're trying to make an adjustment to the scoreboard. It looks like it should be as it is, 6-3. So a game to 15, which means we will take a half time when the first team reaches 8 points. So HMC.
National championships, mixed national championships. She's about 9 months off of an ACL injury, which took her out for quite a while. She's been having quite a few issues with her knees, so it's so good to see her back on the field. And off the bike. Yeah, playing with the team and playing with the disc again. Bringing a lot of depth and experience to the team as well.
Okay, and so we are going to see what happens. We've got some really confident throwers and confident offensive players here for the Euphoria side. And so we're going to see what they're able to do with the wind at their backs. Some really, really speedy legs. Players who are known for working the midfield. Lots of away cuts to really pull the defense deep, slamming on the brakes and coming back under towards the disc, getting a lot of separation from their defensive counterpart. It's Fowler to pick up and initiate. Looking like they're setting up a vertical stack supported by Horvath. Pushes to the far sideline once again. Megan Duffy comes wide, finds Fowler, goes around looking for Chong.
I think that was such a beautiful around pass, and I think definitely able to reel it in as well. Maybe just a bit of miscommunication on who the receiver was downfield.
Aspinwall managed to get in and get a touch, possibly the man of the match so far.
And we're seeing a zone actually from Euphoria right now. Potentially first zone of the game. There's been some really tight match defense, which I think has been really benefiting both teams well. But quite a loose cup with Duffy marking the swing. HMC nonetheless finding the gaps, finding the open opportunities and moving it downfield.
Very impressive to watch a transition zone be set up as well. We saw Euphoria come out on offense. The call to transition to zone as opposed to that match defense, it's a difficult thing to get right, but we're seeing them slowly frustrate HMC as they're forced to go back. There's a lot of fade. Duffy's not able to get a touch.
We're seeing Holdaway directing the field there. This is really slowed down. It's really putting the lid on that quick HMC handler movement that we've been seeing previously.
But it does indicate that Euphoria's zone is doing what it is trying to do. Craddock aggressive on the mark, closing through, but we find Martin near sideline, chips through to Aspinwall. We're building. Irby's trying to shut down the deep space, has to look instead, finds McFarlane.
And an interesting cup right here. The cup is the players that are around the disc. So we're seeing 3 people. A consistent chase or mark is the same person. And then they're setting up 2 around. One person's covering the dump and one person is kind of in the middle of the field. This interestingly opens up a lot of gaps, actually. It opens up a lot of spaces that can be thrown through, which can be challenging downfield. However, Euphoria's got the players that are really in the right space downfield, shutting off those deeper options. Now, to break this, HMC's doing a great job. They really don't need my advice. But they could be finding those gaps better in the cup, just as prime example right there. Finding the spaces that the cup is opening up. HMC unlocks the defense. They show patience, true fortitude there. Really a lot of patience with their passing to score the upward point.
Absolutely. Great work by Martin to close that point out, bringing HMC within 1 of half-time. Like the children's rhyme, so wide you can't go over it, or so high you can't go over it, so wide you can't go round it. so thick you can't go through it. Those are the 3 ways to break a zone. You either stretch the width, you have to use the width of the field, pushing to each sideline to try and tire the zone out. The alternative is to go over the top. We saw Adam Chung throw a nice hammer fake earlier, but again, with that huge upwind, you're exposing the face of the disc to a lot of wind, and it's really, really hard to get that control. Looks like we're going to see either a timeout or possibly a half. It's unclear as to whether or not our first game is to 15 or 13.
And it's a timeout on the field. Now, Blair, as you were just describing, high throws, especially hammers, ones that you're throwing really high up in the air, especially to get over a zone. If you can't go around it, if you can't go through it, you go over it, right? Also, we've seen a lot of throws to combat that and prevent the risk of throwing the disc so high in the air. We've seen a lot of throws and a lot of these players throwing as low to the ground as they can. As I've said quite a few times, there are quite a few ankle biter throws. That is throws that are aimed at people's ankles, and a lot of really beautiful cleanups. People getting low to the ground, laying their bodies out to clean up those low throws. However, the reason players are putting those up, aside from showing their flexibility and quad strength or glute strength, is also because it is less windy closer to the ground. So instead of throwing the disc high up in the air, those epic throws we love to see sailing high, the wind is so much more likely to take those and really blow them around, just like the leaves are seeing on the field. The higher up, the more it's like the disc is likely to end up just anywhere, blow up to Wellington. So when it's lower down to the ground, it's easier to direct it to the place you want, although it may be more difficult to clean up. You need to get a bit lower to pick it up.
It's one of those interesting dichotomies or dualities that when you have a strong wind, when you're throwing into or against the wind, with the wind at your back, it has a tendency to push the disc down towards the ground. The flip side, when you're throwing into the wind, it tends to lift it up. And so really good defense will utilize that. They'll take away higher throws when the wind is at an offense's back, because it forces them to throw lower and it's more likely to generate those turnovers. I think we saw a couple earlier. Some of those resets on the end zone, trying to look back and just reposition the disc, where we lost yards, but also the disc getting pushed down and really forced its way into the ground. The flip side, trying to allow people to throw high when the wind is in front of them, because it forces that disc up and it just creates an opportunity, a big air ball for one of your defensive players to come in and capitalize. We're going to see Sanders with the disc winding up for the pull for HMC, hoping to close out the first half of the game here over Auckland's Euphoria.
And it's an exciting place to be as a puller right now, with the wind at your back, launching it downfield, and we see that extra strength.
But it's going to be carried out towards the far sideline, so Humphreys gives the signal for bricking the disc. A brick means he will bring the disc to the middle of the field, 18 meters in front of his defensive end zone, so there's no tactical or positional benefit conferred to the defense by throwing the disc out of bounds.
We're seeing a match defense, which is classic from HMC. They've been really putting a lot of pressure on, and I've been loving to see how Euphoria is responding with that energy as well. Sticking with what works, though. It's been working well for them. Maybe it's a junk. I take my words back and I eat them. It's a junk. We're looking at match on the handlers and a junk downfield. This means that match on the handlers, they're marking person defense, and downfield, we see a diamond type shape. And in this case, it's 3 across. The wings are under. They're really preventing those unders, which is what we're expecting.
Nice.
Really punishing that. That was such a good around throw from Humphreys.
Great throw there, but Brennan wasn't able to get it back in. The mononymous Aisha once again marking Sanders. Lets one go through to O'Hara as Humphreys looks to close. He's trying to use that height advantage. The disc has to go back. Aisha comes back in.
See, keeping it on the high side of the field, now in the middle. And they're trying to prevent it from going to the far side of the camera, near where you're seeing the bleachers, because that is... it's the downwind side. It's harder to move the disc away from there. What an upwind throw with a bit too much power on it. Now, you really need to be putting the power, that energy on throws like that when you're throwing it upwind, but it can make them more difficult, unfortunately, to catch as Sanders bobbles it.
An uncharacteristic throw choice by Worden. Great attempt, but in these conditions just makes it a little bit harder. Humphreys there lasers one through to get touched by O'Hara as it finds the ground. Sanders not going to initiate, calling for some support.
It looked like one of those mental Ds, as I like to call them, where there's actually no touch on the disc, but just the presence of the defender and kind of the fear that a play might happen just leads to a drop. Good.
Nathan Fader pushing the disc back center field to find Sanders. It bobbles past Valentine, but it looks like a pick has been called. So the question's going to be whether or not the pick happened before or after the throw, whether or not the offense and defense recognize the pick. Quite often, even though the pick's been called, it's not always a guarantee that the play will reset if players can agree that they didn't respond to the pick. Quite often they'll make the determination that the turnover will stand.
An interesting difference between USA Ultimate rules and WIFTIF rules. And it's challenging, I know, at the World Championships when players are coming from different backgrounds, is the pick a strong space where it can be an issue. It looks like the disc might be going back as everyone's just checking in on the field. And Haney giving us a little dance, showing the euphoria that he's feeling.
We see some shaking of the heads. It looks like play is going to initiate with Valentine to have the disc, pushing far sideline. Just players trying to have a little bit of determination as to what's happening. Christine Moore offering a perspective here.
Now, we've seen Euphoria mainly playing in a vertical stack. HMC here, while this could be a vertical stack, looks a lot more like a side stack. And so what they're doing here, especially when the disc is live, if they retain possession, we see the players stacked up on the close side of the field, just down there. And they're really opening up that downwind space to be able to utilize it so the danger space is the whole far side of the field. However, it looks like there's a turnover, thanks to the strong communication from the players on the field.
So again, making the determination that the pick probably didn't have that much of an impact as the player didn't get a hand on the disc.
Looks like a transition junk from HMC. That is a junk defense again with the person marks on the handlers, and a diamond zone formation downfield.
Leong looks back to Humphreys, pushing wide, but Tinas can't get a hand to it. Can't get security, and so once again Sanders to pick up and initiate. Brennan trying to do some defensive quarterbacking, calling players into position. Sanders pushes to Fader. It's Haney.
The lefty backhand.
O'Hara manages to get Sanders, who's doing some great work. A little bit of miscomms and a layout play by Brennan to get the block. He's immediately pushing that into a deep shot, hoping for a cut to come.
That was some incredible awareness. He had his back to the disc, but just saw that stutter, just that pause, and threw his body out to get that D. What an incredible defensive play.
Humphreys trying for a great huck there, but he has to look back. It's Brennan who's come back into the handler space to help out. Humphreys putting it up, but it's going to fall short in the conditions.
He did not see that happening when he put it up. You could see he put so much power on that throw and just expected it to go long. He has that throw normally, but again, Blair, as you said, in these conditions, it's not quite there. Euphoria with another chance, Leong with the disc.
Sanders just overthrowing Herman. It's Leong to Humphreys to Haney. We've seen Haney rip one earlier. He decides to play it safe. Back to Haney again. Gets a bite out of Worden, calling for some space. It's Tinas has the disc. O'Hara leading that junk defense downfield. Tries to find Brennan far sideline. Cannot get it away.
Giving HMC another chance with the disc. We've got O'Hara picking up. Now he's on the downwind side, and there's a strong downwind mark, meaning that he'll need to throw it down the sideline or a beautiful break like that just to center it and give the team some more space. We've got a vertical stack downfield.
Worden super safe, pushing far sideline for Valentine, marked by Moore, nice and aggressive. It's up, and it's Worden to O'Hara, marked by Brennan. Big fake from O'Hara. He's going to come around with a gentle backhand for Valentine. Moore can't get it.
And HMC has successfully just stretched the field to the high side. They went from the low side and just threw break after break. That's one thing that Euphoria defense is going to need to recognize, resulting in a point. Euphoria defense needs to recognize that those break throws that HMC is putting up are a real threat to the offense. One thing that we've seen Euphoria doing is capitalizing on those inside-out forehands. And meanwhile, if HMC is taking the arounds, they need to bring the mark around, of course, to try to prevent those and force potentially some inside-out forehands that may be more challenging to the team.
But that is going to be the conclusion of the first half of the opening match of ULTI.TV's broken but unbowed streaming coverage of the 2023 Division 1 Mixed Ultimate Championships here at Bob Dean Field in increasingly sunny Ōtautahi Christchurch. The weather couldn't keep me away, and it can't keep these players' spirits down. My name, as always, is Blair Monroe.
I'm Kelsey Bielik.
And we will be back with you very shortly.
bitch. I wrote a song. Let's see, last time I played here.
Yeah.
It was the Chalice.
Wow. 1 minute. All right. And we are back as we enter the second half of the match. To say that the wind has picked up a little bit would be a tiny bit of an understatement.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
just a little bit. We've lost one of the walls to the tent. Our camera took a little bit of a Michael Jackson lean before we were able to get a hold of it. Everything is okay. The Invictus of streaming teams, ULTI.TV, here to bring you the 2023 New Zealand Mixed Ultimate Championships Division 1 at Bob Dean Fields. It is American Thanksgiving, and I am thankful, as always, to be joined in the booth by the just fantastic Kelsey Bielik. Arguably, no, not arguably, I take it back. Unarguably, one of the best commentators in the world. I'm going to say it. I'm just getting it out of my system.
I'm flattered, Blair. Thank you. I'm Kelsey Bielik, and I'm flattered to be joined by Blair Monroe, the voice of New Zealand Ultimate himself.
And so, after a very impressive first half showing by HMC going 8-3 over Auckland Euphoria, we're going to see the teams take the field shortly. Euphoria to come out on offense for the second half of the game. They will be the team playing in light from the right-hand side of your screen. HMC playing from the left. In the dark. Now, we've had a pretty consistent upwind moving from the right-hand side of your screen down towards the left side of your screen. We'll see if that holds up, although, as I say that the wind picks up, it tends to die down a little bit, but the curse of the commentator, surely in full effect. It'll be picking up again in just a couple of moments.
Now, that's some helpful background, Blair, because we saw an interesting first half, of course, as you just said, dictated by the wind in a large way. And so at the end of the day here, at the end of this game, what we expect to see is one that team that's able to move the disc from the left side of the field and score up on the right side of the field. The most times, the one who's able to score the most breaks is the one who's going to come out on top. In this case, in the first half, we saw HMC pull that out. Now, Euphoria right now on their end zone, they're getting ready to go, and no doubt discussing how they can offensively. I think it's an offensive issue for them. How when they're on the low side of the field, how can they move the disc up? Also, how can they ensure that every downwind point is theirs? Offensively, I think it's a challenge for them. Meanwhile, HMC, if this half is tied for them, if they lose a bit of momentum, they're still going to come out on top. So it's really Euphoria's game right now. It's up to them to show that they can come out firing, that they can move the disc critically, calmly, or maintain those big throws like we saw that point that Hawaii put up when they scored on the high side of the field. What can they do to combat the wind, or what weather whispering can they do to make it calm down when they're moving it up there, to score those high side points?
Yeah, and really that's what it's going to come down to. It's going to come down to reading and responding to the conditions. As you pointed out, Kelsey, that the team that scores those manages to push those upwind points, scoring in the right-hand side end zone and then converting those into breaks on the downwind, they're going to be the team that walks away with the win. But the way that you do that is by playing each pass as though it's the only one that matters, feeling the wind, making sure that those passes are safe. We've seen quite a lot of shots that have come up. They've come out a little bit high. They've been last-minute bailouts, Hail Marys. The wind has caught them, and that's where we're starting to see a lot of turnovers, a lot of loss of yards. We've got some really clinical offensive players for the Euphoria side. Look at that, the clap of unity as Keshav Chandran, the money man himself, is joined by Mercedes Napolitano, Petra Horvath, Dan Forder, Jackson Irby, Ethan Craddock, and Megan Duffy, who, honestly, if you're just tuning in, that's why they call it the English channel, because you tune in to watch our English Rose, Meg Duffy, destroy that midfield as Craddock looks and centers to Horvath initially. We see Euphoria pushing to a side stack. Horvath putting the disc up. It's a lot of people underneath it.
It's a hospital throw for sure.
Great positioning by Chung there. Didn't have to play, but just having that defensive positioning was enough to stop anyone else getting a clean shot at it. It's Dempster and Sanders to pick up and initiate as we see the HMC players cycling through.
And interesting to see, as I mentioned, a hospital throw, because the disc went up and it just kind of hung there. There were so many players underneath. It can lead to an issue when there's so many bodies in the same space vying for position under the disc. Can lead to injuries. Fortunately, we saw that cleaned up nicely. And then again, now we've got Euphoria with another chance on offense.
Craddock finds Irby, pops one across to Horvath, far sideline. She wants to wind it up and uncork it.
HMC have really settled
big
on
overthrow.
But I really enjoyed how Euphoria was capitalizing on HMC taking a minute to settle and find their players and catch up with them there. They made a few short, really key passes to make some great movement and gain some yards before they clamped down and forced that turnover. We're seeing a transition zone from Euphoria coming out again. And this is a good call. Again, when it's really windy, when it's difficult to throw up and over, or the high throws are more difficult to result in a catch, a zone can be a really great point.
Leishman puts it up, but it turns early. Warden can't get it, but he's going to call a foul.
A massive gust pops up just there.
Unsure whether or not, but it looks like they're gonna accept that foul. Looks like he may have actually fumbled it before the contact, but perhaps he felt he may have had a second bid in that the contact prevented that from happening.
And again, it's a self-refereed sport, so it's up to the players on the field. He's calling it in. And we'll see if Euphoria sets the zone again. When you're getting close to your end zone, it can be advantageous to switch to a person defense. It can be quite difficult to maintain a zone all the way into the end zone and make sure you're covering the space. One small pass is all you need to score the point. Euphoria keeping that zone clamped down. HMC looking for the open options. As I mentioned in the first half, we've seen a lot of really quick handler movement. Again, handlers and downfield players holding the disc for a maximum of up to 3 seconds before moving it. And because they're holding it so much longer, I think this Euphoria zone is really shutting it down. It's really effective. While we haven't seen a turnover just yet, it's really effective. They're making those options, throwing up if he throws.
Worden just able to toe touch that one in for the score. It looks like it was going to be overthrown, but the wind managed to push it back just in bounds. That little hot step that he threw down there to make sure that his first point of contact after securing the disc was in bounds. Great work for the first point of the game to go 9 up over Euphoria's 3.
Great footwork on the catch, as you just said, making sure that he was in bounds with it. And the wind, well, it's been throwing so many discs around, throwing them out of bounds, having its way with them. A great decision there. I think either lucky, I'm going to go ahead and say it was well thought out and well considered on the throw. Put up to the high side, almost directly into the winds, and it looked like it was going to go out of bounds, out of the side of the field, but the wind just pushed it back and made it stop. It paused it, so it was spinning in the air, and it came in for an easier catch, so he didn't have to chase it down, lay out of bounds, just towed it right in for an easy point.
Streets ahead on that throw. Fantastic work there by HMC to put another one on the board and really set the tone for the second half of the game for their side. They've got the momentum.
And another upwind point, which again is the challenge here. That's the challenge for both teams. That's the difficulty. The team that scores the most upwind points, there's the most breaks, is going to win the game. Euphoria, I'm really hoping that they come out. I want to see more of those either beautiful long throws, some more of that beautiful connection that we've seen before. I'd like to see them come out and come out of the half having discussed it and know what they need to put on the line. So we'll see if HMC continues with their clamp down person defense that's been so successful, and if Euphoria can make those clean passes that we've been seeing and score that upward point that I would like to see.
I think we are. So we're going to see the big pull coming up from HMC, but as you point out, Kelsey, I think it is a case of Euphoria needing to just take that extra second with the disc. They've got some confident handlers. They've been drilling those inside shots, but the question is, great spirited call by Gigi Forder there. She might have been able to make the argument that it was up, but no hesitation as McFarlane with the disc marked by Irby.
Players battling on the field to make these clean throws as the ULTI.TV crew are battling to keep the tent down and not from blowing onto the field. We're battling to keep our chairs on the ground. So it's a testament to the throws that are happening out on the field right now.
Aspinwall working with Jessica Chambers. McFarlane manages to thread one through to that front corner for Chambers, put another one on the board. It's back-to-back for HMC. They have had 3 on the bounce, taking hard. In fact, 4, I believe. I think it was 6-3, and we've seen unanswered scores from HMC. Euphoria need to do something to get themselves back in the game. They're playing with a lot of heart, but we need to see that heart matched with brains and with patience. They definitely have the capability. It's just about that decision-making, that execution, dialing in everything, making those little tiny micro adjustments to the play to just keep them in the game. We're seeing HMC walk away with things a little bit, 5 points away from victory. Euphoria with a much longer and harder path ahead of them. But we've seen teams come back from worse.
We have. I feel like I've been on the losing side of having teams come back from worse in the past as well. Also, I think important to say that HMC is a Christchurch-based team. You know, they're on their home turf. They're familiar with these fields. They're familiar with these conditions. Not to say that Euphoria, hailing from Auckland, isn't, but always helpful to be playing in a space when you've slept in your own bed for the night. You know, when you're playing in space where you've trained with the teams, you're well familiar with it. You know how to get there in the morning. You know, the simple things. I want to comment on that point just there. So you see the 4 cones, obviously the 4 orange cones in each end zone, indicating the 4 corners, which you, of course, have to score inside to score a point. But those cones also represent really key, dangerous areas on offense, areas that you really want to be looking at. A lot of the points that we've seen throughout this game, that you'll see throughout the rest of the day, and you'll see generally in the sport of ultimate Frisbee, a lot of the points are scored in those corners. They're spaces to aim for when cutting for the disc or throwing. So while that was an open side pass, it was just the cleanest, most classic point as the player cut to the open side just to the front cone, and the throw went up to make it a point. With the mark, we're seeing the mark relatively flat but forcing downwind. The mark takes away essentially half the field, so players should be trying to prevent those open side passes. That's your job downfield. What just happened to Blair?
Oh, my goodness gracious. After that pull, fading back down, giving Euphoria a great opportunity to set up an end zone play. Haney was looking for Burris in the end zone, ends up with a high stall count, can't get away with his reset. Esther Leong tried to make a play for it, got shut down by the defense, eventually tries to put the hammer up for Burris, faded away and touched out of Mitchell Brennan's hands as we see that transition zone again. Burris on the chase, supported by Brennan. We see Aisha
now HMC
marking that wing.
They're deep in their end zone right now. They're making their way out, but it's a really dangerous area. If you throw slightly the wrong pass, it's opening up opportunities for the other team to score a Callahan, which is a point that you score while on defense. It's a defensive point, so to speak. However, HMC walking it out easily. Now they've got some good momentum behind them, moving the disc well, finding those open passes. So it's up to Euphoria to shut that down and stop that movement, and they cannot, as it's a point.
Chin to Francis for that point. Francis absolutely dominating that point, almost not by himself, definitely on the shoulders of his teammates, but catching every second pass. We had Holdaway, we had Chambers, 1, 2 passes back to Francis, straight through that zone. Not quite sure where the middle of that Euphoria zone was, maybe a little bit out of position, maybe the timing of the cuts if it was circling back and pushing through those 2 chases right up the front of that zone, creating a great opportunity to just chip away at the field before threading that low throw through. If we get a chance to see that again, it was a beautiful low throw with the angle of the disc up, so it's not going to catch a lot of wind because of how low it is, but with that angle, it's going to catch just enough to float into the hands of Chin for another pass through to Francis. And so Euphoria 8 points down, HMC taking a walk to the winner's circle.
And you know, Blair, I love to see points like that, especially with zones. You often talk to people who are classically handlers, that's the space they're used to, and they'll say, most of them, that they love zones. They love to play offense in zones. It's their happy place. And that's because handlers get a lot of time to pass in between each other. Oftentimes there's an open pass and it provides a lot of space to think and consider, how can we break this? How can we unlock it? It makes potentially cutting downfield a bit more boring sometimes. You need to be a lot more patient when you're downfield in a zone. You're playing offense when you're someone who's a cutter and you're just standing and kind of waiting for options to open up. You're trying to figure out how to get open, how to touch the disc, because zone is generally a handler's offense. Now, in points like that HMC just scored, they just were off to the races. One thing they did really well was they kept the momentum, they broke out of the cup and passed the defensive players, and they just kept it moving, which, as you said, led to almost all the players, I think all the players on the line touched the disc during that point, which is really exciting as a team. It shows really great teamwork, that there was that trust, but also really great zone offense.
Yeah, and so we're going to see Horvath take the brick, so she'll bring that to the middle of the field. But as you point out, Kelsey, you're exactly right. Working in the downfield on that zone offense is not particularly gratifying, but it is so necessary for the team to succeed. If those players in the downfield aren't doing their work, as we see Ben Chong pressuring the zone defense from HMCs, looking for an option, manages to chip through to Irby. As those players in the downfield, if they're not cutting, it doesn't test the defense. The defense can close in, collapse that zone, and start applying a lot more pressure on the handlers, which is, in conditions like this, when the wind isn't there for those long bailout options, that's where you see those quick turnovers, those quick switches back to offense and closes out. As we see Dempster Looking for O'Hara.
Both teams running zones now at this point. And as you guys can imagine, it's hard enough to throw the disc when there's one person in front of you, and then imagine when there's 3 other people. Just throwing around that space, they're taking away so many options. So once you move it past that, if you can keep it going, keep it going.
Forder nearly taking a bite out of that on Dempster's reset. Chong so squirrely, he's able to shut down that defense. It's Sanders pinned by Forder. Manages to find Dempster somehow. Threads one through for Fader.
And I really like this strategy that Euphoria is throwing here. They're putting so much pressure on that handler space, as I've said so many times, as I'm repeating myself again. We've seen quick movement from the HMC handlers, and the strategy of this Euphoria defense is to just slow that down and put a stopper on it, which is very different from the zone that we've seen HMC throwing, which is to prevent the deep options.
Horvath tried to put one through to Megan Duffy, came in a little bit low and bobbled, giving the disc back to HMC. O'Hara with a beautiful outside forehand, just nice and low, curved back around for a great score by HMC, taking them within 3 of the victory in the first game of our 2023 Division 1 New Zealand Mixed Ultimate Championships.
You love to see points like that, where it's so clean, especially with the vision from the handler to find that open player and in one pass score a point. It felt like there was no recognition on the field almost. It was so simple and such a clean point that no one even made a move. It was a beautiful point. And how better can you score than that one simple pass?
We talk a lot about the idea of the disappointment gap. That short transition between when you've been playing offensive and you've got that flow, and then something happens and there's a turn, how quickly are you able to get your head back up and make that switch to defense? And that, I think, is what happens there. You have that second, the disc is in your hands, you close your hands around the disc, and all of a sudden they're empty. What do I do? Oh, wait, I'm on defense. And that fraction of a second is enough for the team who was on defense to make that mental switch and just put a beautiful shot up to a player who's recognized what's happened. It's one of the benefits of being up front in a defensive set is that you're the furthest downfield. So quite often you're seeing that and thinking, now's my chance to strike. And we saw that perfectly for HMC to put them on the point as Dempster comes out with the pull. It's got a lot of float underneath it, but he's made it into the half. Has he? No, he hasn't. It touches down in the HMC defensive half. You could see the amount of wobble on that as Humphreys picks up to initiate, finds Tinas.
And another thing that I feel like that ties into that, it's experience transitioning from offense to defense.
A wobbly reset means Leishman is going to pull it down.
It's experience, and it can also be energy. The disc goes deep. Leong is underneath it, a former national sprinter.
Oh, Brennan with a collision, but Chung's going to pull it down anyway. 2 points away from an HMC win.
And mixed ultimate frisbee, we've got all genders on the field. Everyone's included and everyone's welcome. Generally, it can be a bit more challenging when you have large people in the deep space covering that. Also challenging when you have a defender like Esther Leong chasing after you, as I mentioned, a former national sprinter. She has a lot. She's got a lot of experience, a lot of strategic knowledge. She's got throws under her belt.
She's so fast. She's so smart. Legs. She's so nice. If a Smile picked up an ultimate frisbee, you'd want it to be Esther Leong when it grew up.
Anyway, she was there. She was there to clean up the throw, the wind, just pushing it downfield. So important to have the speed to be in that space, but also the positioning. And when the gusts pop up, it can be difficult to read where the disc is going to go. And happy to see that result in a clean point despite a few bubbles of contact.
Wow. And so we're going to see, looks like a male matching point. So 4 male matching players on the line, 3 female matching players on the line. Cam Bennett with the disc for HMC. Nice long downwind option.
First point that Bennett has played. He's coach captaining the team this year. He's been mostly supporting the team from the sidelines, and I think this might be the first point that he's playing. Exciting to see him clean it up.
Absolutely. Just a real joy of a human, that Cam Bennett. We'll see if that translates to frisbee skill as he puts up the pull. With the downwind, it looks like it's going to definitely overthrow the field.
You know, maybe not skill with the throw. Exciting to see what he has. to offer on defense at this point.
Cam Bennett definitely had a hearty breakfast, possibly some leftover hell pizza. It's definitely something. One of our tournament sponsors, huge thanks to them for helping to keep us fed on the sideline. Maybe not optimal nutrition for some of our athletes, but certainly giving energy for Cam Bennett to well overthrow the field as Haney resets to Humphries against this transition zone. Goes around. Cam Bennett's going to get a touch.
Some miscommunication about who's picking up there. A quick transition. HMC off to the races.
McFarlane. Nice low release.
Euphoria's racing to cover up. We can see direction on the field. And finally, there's a player marking the thrower there.
Bennett with the disc to McFarlane as Humphries closes. Burris in front of the disc. Puts it through. Aisha really forcing that far sideline. Chambers. McFarlane manages to get it, but it's not going to be in. He comes right to the front of the end zone. Long arms of Burris trying to shut that one down. Comes back. Finds Chambers again. McFarlane, it's a two-person game, threading it through. Drops the back foot in. And it's called a point for Oscar Francis.
What footwork?
Once again, Francis just doing a huge amount of work for the HM side. As HMC are one away from the first win of their tournament. The first win of our stream game. Euphoria on the back foot, 11 points behind. We are about an hour and 10 minutes into the game. They do have another 20 minutes if they want to make up that 11-point deficit. It's not impossible. I've always said there are no realists, just disappointed optimists. We are going to see what happens for this, what HMC are hoping to be the last point of the game. A huge, massive close for this first match of the tournament.
And interesting to see what HMC will do here. Now, if I were leadership, I would potentially consider putting on the strongest line, just closing out the game as quickly as you can. I mean, they have quite a lead, but if you put on a strong line, you can just close it. You can make a clean, strong game. You can finish it and give your team a longer break, a longer rest.
Euphoria, on the other hand, every point matters. From here on out, nothing but perfection will allow them to win this game. There's a huge amount of wind. We're going to see Holdaway with the disc to send the pull up. Are Euphoria going to be gifted with another opportunity? A high disc that loses yards on the pull that really gives them a close opportunity to close it out. And will they be able to close it out this time? We're going to see in just a moment.
And we saw Holdaway practicing pulls before the game started. We've seen her pulling consistently throughout the match as well. And it's going to go where she wants it to go, over the halfway line, giving HMC time to set up, and also just a little bit farther for Euphoria to work it in order to score the point.
Greg Fowler with the disc, marked by Sanders. Just an absolute gentleman and a textbook handler, finds Craddock near sideline.
HMC going to person defense now. So we're seeing match instead of the junkie zone we saw before. And a low huck, a low outside in forehand, knocked down by HMC defense.
Yeah, not able to be pulled down by Duffy, so McFarlane's going to pick it up as they apply that same 2-3-2 zone pressure. Just overthrown!
And Holdaway's known for her massive layouts, but when it's already out of bounds.
And this could be it for Euphoria. Horvath to pick up on the inside cone. Forder with a spin move tries to put McFarlane in the blender, leaves him behind. Fowler is a comfortable reset.
Oh, and
not gonna be able to do it.
HMC's mark there, they're forcing upwinds, giving a lot of downwind options for a large swing. And when you're giving downwind options for a swing, it makes it easier to throw the swing. However, we showed there that with that pressure, even though the swing went off, it was not executed well enough to result in a successful catch.
Less haste, more speed required here. It's that trying to set that pace. McFarlane, you could tell his blood was hot. He was running for it. Fiola to Napolitano.
Taken to the knees with a stylish catch.
Throws one high again with that wind. It's going to fade back.
Yeah,
Not going to get an opportunity. We're seeing turn after turn. Nothing but perfection is going to keep Euphoria in this game.
For a handler,
McFarlane's got it.
there was a handler-initiated dump, and it's really difficult to throw those pop passes. A pop pass doesn't have much spin on it into the wind.
Forder holding position, a legitimately positioned defender. Even though there was that contact there, he held his space, which means it's not going to be a foul. It's a safe play. Just reached up over the top.
Interesting to see Euphoria switched to a horizontal stack now instead of their classic vertical stack. Turnover after turnover, as is the winds, of course, coming into play. But switching to a horizontal stack, which can be an easier way to respond to a zone call, although with a bit of confusion as to where the inbounds mark is. And Euphoria back with their transition zone, putting a lot of pressure on the handlers.
Goes over the top to McFarlane.
For HMC.
To Harry Jones, looks back, finds Haida with the disc now as Forder closes the trap.
And
A little bit inside, it's looking for Sanders. He's got it. Duffy in hot pursuit, trying to put the pressure on. Michelle Martin looking to cut in, get the reset, marked by Forder. Chips around to McFarlane. They want to close out the game. McFarlane goes wide to an unmarked Sanders. He puts the shot up. No, he doesn't. Forder clogging the lane, but creates an opening for McFarlane as Duffy shuts down that zone one more time.
And we're seeing a lot of movement downfield as HMC players are trying to find those open spaces, but just can't with that wall of Euphoria in front of them, a wall of joy.
There's Horvath putting the shot up, but it falls early in the wind as it gets pushed down. Duffy wide open in the end zone. A great bid by Jones on that last HMC possession to try and keep it in bounds, or keep it in hands rather, but it's just getting pushed down to the turf, giving this back to Euphoria. I think that the tension of the game, each of these turnovers, it's building a tension meter in the players, and they're starting to respond to that. What needs to happen is the players need to take a second to calm down, think, okay, doesn't matter what happened in the previous possession, this is the one that counts. Holdaway pointing, trying to direct traffic, finds McFarlane, who wants to chip one back through, but Craddock and Forder shut that down.
And as you're saying, Blair, there's two types of fatigue that we're seeing. Both these teams have drilled extensively. They're in shape, and it's the first game of a 3-day tournament. Are they tired? Maybe a little bit. Are they mentally tired, though? That's what we're seeing out of long points like this. When you're mentally, you just want to make things happen. You just want to put up the throw that you know you have, and it's not the best decision. It's a less likely throw to result in a catch. So we will need to see that drilled experience. This is where the mental confidence and the experience comes into play. When you're not just in shape physically, but you're in shape mentally, so to speak, and you know what the best options are, and you're not going to bite on those enticing deep looks necessarily that may not be the best options.
Sanders manages to get it through to Holdaway, bouncing forward to Martin as the zone struggles to get into position. Looks back, and there is the bobble. Once again, taking that second, overcoming that mental fatigue, as you pointed out, Kelsey. It's about drilling it. Fake it till you make it? No, that's 2022. We drill it until we kill it. And we're seeing just that mental fatigue start to set in. Which team is going to hold it together for this point as Fiola threads it through to Duffy. Far sideline for Napolitano, getting two cutters streaking deep. Craddock and Forder, but she's looking them off in favor of Horvath. A great, confident handler.
Duffy dominating these undercuts. Holdaway definitely preventing the deep look. She's nervous about those deep downwind looks. She's giving Duffy the unders with her beautiful lion's mane of a ponytail flying in the wind. There she is looking for the undercut again.
Craddock to Horvath again. Big fake as Jones closes off Fiola as an option. Threads one nice and through low. Napolitano again with a great knee slide, but she's not going to be able to get it in hands.
So HMC really shutting down a lot of options there, especially with their downwind mark and their person defense. They were giving up a few options, but it was difficult for Euphoria to find them, especially to move the disc upfield, which is what I think they really needed, to move the disc to the high side of the field to give so many more easy options. Holdaway trying to thread it through.
Great block by Gigi Forder getting the read.
We've got a team of seamstresses here. There are no holes in this clothing.
Not with the needles that they are trying to thread. Forder tries to lay out, but fantastically. But it has interrupted our ability to bring you the coverage of the best ultimate in New Zealand, Australia, and around the world. HMC walking away with the second half. The wind putting in a lot of errors that Euphoria were not able to capitalize on. They turned the disc back. Great performance by the local side. It's going to be an opportunity for both of these teams to learn and to progress throughout the tournament. Kelsey,
Thanks, Blair. And as you said, the wind's very much of the third team on the field, impacting a lot of throws. We saw a lot of bobbles from both teams, uncharacteristic turnovers, really a high turnover game, which is kind of what you'd expect. Also a few turnovers on our end and some technical issues. Now, a quick note to everyone that if we do cut out here, you're welcome to follow the stream. Blair and I are your camera people and also commentating, managing both at ULTI.TV on Instagram. So welcome to follow the live feed there, as if we do cut out here, if you'd like to follow along and see what's happening, we'll be doing our best.
Absolutely. And if you want to support us and give us the best chance of giving you uninterrupted coverage, head on over to patreon.com/ULTI.TV, give us your spare change, maybe help us buy a second generator so that we don't lose power in the middle of a stream, so that your eyes can remain focused on the very best sport in one of the very best countries in the world. Until then, this has been HMC and Euphoria. Myself, Blair Monroe, in the booth with the impossible, the fantastic, the beloved Kelsey Irene Bielek. We will be with you for the next one.
Thanks, Blair. See you.
ULTI.TV